Chapter 11. Part 1. Logan's POV. After my mate's breakdown, she remained buried in my chest with her hands still clung to my shirt until eventually she went back to sleep. I guess crying for 30 minutes straight did consume all her energy. I gently placed her properly on the bed and pulled the covers over her. Her tail was still moving around before it eventually stopped. Ever since I was a kid, I knew that my mate would be in some sort of danger, be it from rogues, hunters, or rival packs, given as I'm soon to be alpha of the most powerful pack in the state. To get to me, they would use her, but now, I think she'll be in more danger than I imagined. They would now want her for her powers, or better say, for her pearl that would give them power. I had to take the proper precautions if I want to keep her by my side. I quietly made my way out of the room and headed to my dad's office. "Come in," was his reply to my knocks.
"Dad, I need to speak with you." The seriousness in my voice made him look up from his files and straight into my eyes. I sat on the chair opposite him.
"Dad, I need you to increase the safety measures around our territory and the pack house," I said sternly. "And why is that?" "We already have patrol all around. Plus, we are the most powerful pack and our warriors are the strongest. I don't think any fool would even think about attacking," he replied calmly. "I know, Dad, but think of it. If word got out about my mate being a gumhiho, we are most likely to be attacked for her. People who would want her pearl would stop at nothing. We don't know what's waiting for us out there," I said desperately. That earned me a sigh from him, then a reply. "I guess you're right, son." He grabbed a map of our territory and the surrounding areas and started going through it. "Where do you think we should intensify our guards more?" "South," was my only reply. "Why do you say that?" "Well, south is where most of the other packs are located, including her old pack. And north is where the king's castle is located. I don't think the king will attack us," I said, laughing at the last part. My father laughed too, shaking his head. "Yeah, I don't think he would. Okay, it's settled then. I'll ask Mark, his beta, to assign more guards." "Okay, thanks, Dad. I'll go check up on my mate now," I said, smiling, and started making my way to the door when I stopped and looked at him over my shoulder. "Oh, and Dad, when she wakes up, you'll have to apologize." He looked at me dumbfounded. I continued, "After all, she's not as weak as you thought she was." For a moment, I saw a bit of guilt in his eyes, but then he smiled. "Yes, looks like I'll have to." I smiled back then and went out the door only to be stopped again by my father's voice. "Son, you forgot to mention, what's her name?" I stiffened at his question. I still don't know, Dad," I said, then quickly left to avoid any further questions. I didn't want to tell anyone that my mate herself doesn't remember her own name. It's up to her whether she wants people to know about her past or not. I would do nothing but at and by her side and support her in every way. When I opened my bedroom door, I saw my mate standing at the bed's side, hugging a pillow. She looked beautiful with her black hair cascading down her back like a silk curtain, her blue eyes looking intently at me, and her tail moving behind her. She was still in my white shirt that my mother helped change her into a while back. It reached her mid-thigh. The image of her long, sexy legs turned my wolf on and me on. I snapped out of my thoughts, and then confusion spread across my face. "Why are you standing there? You're still hurt," I asked as I started moving towards her. She took 2 steps back, which made me stop. I can't really, my tail, she started stuttering. I couldn't help but find it amusing to look at her expression as she tried to tell me what's wrong. Realization struck me, making my face break into a huge smile. I, again, started making my way towards her. She took another step back. I stopped again. "Don't worry, baby girl. I won't hurt you, I promise," I said, and started moving again. And to my ultimate satisfaction, she didn't move back. I slowly reached her till we were only about a couple of centimeters away. "It's not comfortable to sit on your tail, is it?" I said. I saw her face and neck turn all shades of pink and red. She looked down at her legs like they were the most interesting thing, then nodded. I wrapped my arms around her and gently pulled her into a hug. I felt her body tense but relax as I started stroking her hair. "Don't worry. I can ask Alexis if she can help," I murmured in her hair. She pulled slightly and looked up at me confused. "Alexis is a witch. I know it might sound weird, but she's also one of our pack members. She's the one that told us about you being a gumhiho. You don't have to worry about her. She won't hurt you. No one will." She broke eye contact, and I saw her looking down, obviously, debating whether to believe me and trust Alexis or not. And when she looked me in the eye, I knew that she at least believed me. "Do you want me to call her now?" I asked softly. She nodded. "Mom, can you please call Alexis to come to my room?" I asked my mom through our mind link. "Sure. Is everyone all right, sweetie?" came her reply. "Yeah." I looked at my mate and again smiled. "Done. Alexis will be here any minute now," I told her. She furrowed her eyebrows, scrunched her nose, and looked at me like I grew 3 more heads. I laughed slightly at her expression and then explained, "Mind link." Her face went back to normal and her mouth formed a slight "oh." She looked so cute, I can't help it. Sure enough, after about 2 minutes we heard someone knocking on the door. I felt my mate stiffen again in my arms and I started stroking her hair again, reassuringly. "Come in," I called, still holding my mate's body, and then saw Alexis' head pop in. She then opened the door more and entered fully. She looked at my mate and smiled. "Hi." She was waving her hand at us, but directed more toward my mate. However, my mate didn't wave back, but tightened her grip with her hands that were on my sides. Alexis didn't lose her smile, though, and started walking towards us. I felt my mate fidget in her place, and worry came out of her in waves. "Alexis, please stay where you are. Don't come any closer," I told her, and gave her an apologetic look. She immediately obeyed. "Okay, I'm sorry. I'll just stay here," she said, still smiling, which I was grateful for. She then continued, "Okay, what do you need from me?" "We would like to know if there is a way for my mate's tail to disappear," I said, more like asked. "Oh, it's easy. Just close your eyes and imagine them fading away," she said, directing her words more towards my mate. You never looked away from Alexis. My mate then turned her head and looked at me. I smiled at her. "Don't worry, baby. I'll stay here with you. Just close your eyes and imagine your tail fading." I spoke softly. I was flabbergasted when my mate didn't hesitate and closed her eyes, her head still directed towards me. I now knew that she trusts me. If not fully, then at least a 50%. Soon after, I saw her tail fading from tip to base and then was completely gone. I was in awe at what I just saw. My mate then opened her eyes. I looked down at her and a huge grin was plastered across my face. "It's gone," I said. She looked at me in disbelief. Looks like she didn't think it would actually work. She turned her head, trying to see if it was really gone. But of course, it wasn't that easy seeing, as it's impossible for her to actually look back. She looked over her other shoulder, then attempted to move, turned her body really fast as to catch a glimpse of its tip. She looked like a dog trying to bite its own tail. I heard Alexis's muffled laughs, and I couldn't help but laugh myself at the sight. My mate heard us as she stopped, and her face turned red. I tried to stop laughing as I took her hand and led her towards the mirror. I stood behind her and placed both my hands on her shoulders. She was now sure that her tail was gone. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, and our gaze was broken when Alexis spoke. "I think my job here is done. I'll leave you guys now." She turned on her heels and left us alone. "Sorry," I heard my mate whisper softly. Thank God to my werewolf hearing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard it. I turned her face to me. Why would you apologize? I asked, confusion lacing my every word. She looked down to our feet again, her face tomato red. I embarrassed you in front of her, she said quietly. I smiled and pulled her into a hug. Baby girl, you would never embarrass me, I said. Don't ever think that, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise, okay? I pulled away slightly to look into her eyes. Promise me that you will never feel that you bring me down or embarrass me or anything of that. Promise me that you'll always remember that I love you and only you. No one can ever change that. She looked at me and I swear I could see her eyes glaze with tears. Promise me, sweetheart, I said. I promise, was her reply before she gave me the most beautiful smile I ever saw. As girly as it sounds, but I really think my heart skipped a couple of beats, and I loved every bit of it. I feel like I would hyperventilate on happiness. Want to go sit down? I asked her, and she nodded. I laced our fingers together, of course, the fingers of her good hand, seeing as the other hand didn't fully heal, and made my way to our bed. I sat down with my back resting on the headboard and gently picked my maid up and placed her on my lap. She gasped softly from my actions and her body tensed a bit before it relaxed again. She took a couple of hesitant moments before she, very lightly, placed her head on my chest. Shocks erupted from wherever she touched. I started stroking her hair then and said, as much as I would love to use endearing names all the time to call you, wouldn't you want to have a name, a real one? I wouldn't really appreciate anyone else using any words of endearment to call you. She raised her head and looked at me. I get to have a name, a real one, she asked, not believing her own words. Of course, until you remember what your real name was, well, think of another, I said. Do you have anything in mind? I get to choose? She asked, to which I nodded. Actually, there is this name that I like, she said. I nodded again for her to continue. It's Evangeline, she replied. Evangeline, I repeated, liking its sound from my tongue. It's beautiful. Really? She asked in discomfort. My face broke into a huge grin as I nodded. Yes, it's absolutely beautiful, just like you. That earned me another display of red and pink on her face. From now on, if anyone asks you, your name will be Evangeline Logan Thompson, I said sheepishly. She looked at me confused, so I explained. Well, Evangeline as your first name, Logan as your surname, and Thompson as your family name. Since now you are a part of our family, I said, still grinning like an idiot.